Get it.
We'll go ahead and begin. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out this afternoon. Today is our agenda meeting, and we will be reviewing the action items that will be formally addressed and voted upon next Tuesday, December 3rd, right here at City Hall at 6 p.m. And to lead us through the agenda, I'll call upon our city manager, Mr. Bill Burrow.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. At your December 3rd meeting, you'll have Gary Troutman, President and CEO of the Hot Springs Chamber and Hot Springs Metro Partnership, here to deliver his economic development report. We'll have Sunrise Rotary Club here presenting a check to the mayor and our Parks and Trails Director, Anthony Whittington, for bike racks. And then Amos Gray, the Executive Director of High Impact Movement, will present their year-end financial report and 2025 program plans. Moving into your agenda, also, well, yeah, this is the first item. Acknowledgement of the dates for the Board and Directors meeting to be held January through June of 2025. You'll set your dates at that meeting. Consent agenda section, our first item is consider resolution R-24-213, a resolution authorizing certain changes to the signatories on the City of Hot Springs bank accounts with Bank OZK, and our Finance Director, Karen Scott, will present.
Good afternoon. The Bank OZK requires formal board approval when any changes are made to the signatories on all Bank OZK accounts. Due to the changes in the Assistant Finance Director personnel, it is necessary to make such changes. Board approval is needed to 1, remove Sandra Skillern from all accounts and signatory authority, and 2, add Steve Martin to all accounts, as well as adding him as a signatory. Staff recommends approving these changes.
Any questions from board members? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have resolution R-24-214, a resolution extending an agreement with Hope Works Job Experience Program for certain employment opportunities and for other purposes. And our Solid Waste Director, Samantha Jones, will present.
Good afternoon. This resolution is requesting board approval to extend our agreement with the Hope Works Job Experience Program. This agreement provides up to $100,000 to administer the program and associated tasks. The annual funding remains the same since its conception in 2020. The Hope Works Job Experience Program supplements our existing litter program and focuses on state-maintained roadways with emphasis on the interchanges for the MLK Jr. Expressway. It is administered by Janie Smith with the Jackson House and offers participants an opportunity to earn money, gain job experience, and receive information about various local services to help them in their status of homelessness.
Any questions on this item? Thank
Thank you.
Hey, Sam, will you have the results for the packet, what they've done this past year?
Yes.
What they've collected?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, let's consider resolution R-24-215, a resolution authorizing a contract with Time Striping, Inc. for the Downtown Street Imprint Crosswalk Improvement Projects. This is in the amount of $310,956, and our Public Works Director, Ron Seabright, will present.
Good afternoon. A request for proposals to provide labor and materials for the Downtown Street Imprint Crosswalks was duly advertised and noticed. The city received only one response. Time Striping. Upon evaluation of the response, it was noted that the total project price was higher than allotted project budget. After negotiations to keep the project within budget constraints, Time Striping and the city have agreed to reduce the quantities listed in the RFP and to extend the time frame for completion so that the contract price will not exceed $310,956. We eliminated a couple crosswalks that were down a little farther towards the north end. Those can be added in at a later date, but we want to try to get the ones that are crossing central as most important because they'll give higher visibility to the crosswalks and they'll give a lot of aesthetics as well.
The ones removed were actually north-south, right, like Mountain Street?
Correct.
Now, is there anything special with this striping? I mean, I know we've talked about different type of lighting packages, you know, for the non-signaled crosswalks, but is there?
So street imprinting is kind of, what you do is you have to heat up the asphalt. You use a decorative pattern, like a brick pattern, to make it look like brick. And then you use what's called a high maintenance acrylic that coats it, and it gives you the color of a brick and a bright white outline on both sides. There's some pictures in your packet where you'll be able to see the finished product. We looked at trying to do concrete across the road, and some of the prices that were coming back were well above what we could afford. So this was the best solution for that project.
Director Trustee?
Thank you. How many crosswalks are in this particular project?
I believe we have
I'm sure
7, and they're all in your packet
Like I
outlined.
said, it'd be in our packet, I'm sure, but,
Yes, sir.
okay. 7?
Let's see here.
I know, it's,
Coming from Washita to Park, right?
Correct. We are doing Spring, though, we're doing north-south on Spring, though. That one there that crosses
Okay.
into 2 pieces. So that
Okay.
one will be done, but also the east-west.
All right.
the pricing, when was the last time we did this, or have we not?
This is the first time.
First time, so.
You know,
They've
we-
done it in other areas of the state, and we went and looked at it, and it looked really, really nice. That's the pictures that will be in your packet.
We've overlaid what's there several times with just fresh paint, but just traffic wear takes it off. So when you're down there now, it just looks like a lot of bare spots in the crosswalk areas. This is something that it should be more permanent than what we've had in the past with paint.
Correct. And we got state approval for it, so they agreed to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, consider Resolution R 24-216, a resolution confirming the appointment of Dr. Lisa M. Kazire to position 2 of the Hot Springs Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, and our city clerk, Harmony Morrissey, will discuss the item.
Thank you. Mr. Howard Sublett resigned from position 2 on the Housing Authority November 7th because he's moving outside of Hot Springs. Arkansas Code annotated 14-169-208 states that when the term of office of a Housing Authority Commissioner expires or other vacancy occurs, the commissioners shall appoint a successor to fill the vacancy, subject to confirmation by the municipal or county governing body. On November 18th, 2024, the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners appointed Dr. Lisa Kazire to fulfill the remainder of the term for position 2, and the commission forwarded that resolution, respectfully requesting that the City Board of Directors confirm this appointment at their next regularly scheduled meeting.
Very good. Any questions on this? Director Trustee?
Just one, is that the only opening on that board now, since Howard resigned?
That is the only current opening right
Okay.
now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, consider Resolution R 24-217, a resolution authorizing the donation of a surplus pumper fire engine to the Fountain Lake Fire Department, and Fire Chief Ed Davis will present.
Good evening, Directors. I come for you today based upon a request from Fountain Lake Fire Department. Back in August of this year, Fountain Lake contacted us whenever they found that we were going to be accepting a delivery of a new pumper, and said that if we had a surplus piece of equipment, a pumper, that we're going to take out of service, that they would appreciate it if the City of Hot Springs would consider donating to them. Earlier this year, Fountain Lake wrecked one of their primary response pumpers. They have 2, and totaled the apparatus out. I'm sure they got an insurance payment back on that, but at the same time, with them trying to get a new truck and the amount of time that it takes to actually have a fire truck fabricated, it's a lengthy period of time now. So Fountain Lake, is requesting that the City of Hot Springs donate to them a surplus fire engine. That would be our 1991 Pierce Dash 1,500 gallon per minute pumper. Its unit ID is 4703. The apparatus in question is in fair shape. It's one that's 33 years of age. And it is something that is serviceable. However, it is certainly approaching the end of its life. Since Fountain Lake Fire Department is in need of this engine, and we're going to PTR it because we don't want to keep more than 2 reserve engines. There's just no reason to do that. The maintenance costs associated on the older engines are higher than the newer ones. And so one of the things we'd like to do, and it's been our practice in the past, the City of Hot Springs practice, is to donate our surplus apparatus to a local volunteer fire department. In this case, it would be serving a volunteer fire department here in Garland County, someone close by. We've included in here pictures of the particular piece of equipment, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Is that unit still in service for us?
No, it is no longer in service for the city of Hot Springs.
And when was it taken out of service?
When we received and placed into our inventory the new pumper that you just bought for us.
Yeah.
Ed, what was the market value on that?
About $35,000. And it's certainly within your purview to say, we would just want to put this up and sell it. It's a thing to where I come before you with this simply because Fountain Lake requested it.
I think we've done that in the past, I think, with other volunteer departments, haven't we?
Yes, sir, it's been our practice. We've done it 2 other times in the last few years.
I meet annually with the other mayors of the municipalities within Garland County, and we always talk about our efforts to work together and to have a cooperative relationship, and this certainly would be consistent with that.
Yes, sir, we felt like that it would be a gesture of goodwill to the city of Fountain Lake and to the surrounding areas.
The pump works. I mean, one thing you taught me about fire apparatus is that you want to have reliable, and I understand it's end of life, and I do understand, the volunteer natures of volunteer fire departments. Some of the resources aren't at the level, but they get there. It is going to spray water, pump
Yes,
water.
sir. So we just completed pump testing. We do that every year, and this engine did qualify, barely, but it did qualify as a 1,500 gallon per minute pumper.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have considered Resolution R 24-218, a resolution authorizing an offer and acceptance for the purchase of certain solar site locations as part of the city's Hot Springs power program, solar power program, approving a budget adjustment and for other purposes. The Board of Directors passed resolution number 9508 back in September of 19, authorizing an energy services agreement between Scenic Hill Solar and the City of Hot Springs, whereby the City of Hot Springs designates city-owned property as the location for construction of solar-powered electric generating facilities by Scenic Hill, and Scenic Hill designs, constructs, operates, owns, and maintains the facility at no capital cost to the city while it provides power under this agreement. The type of energy services or power purchase agreement is a financial arrangement in which a third-party developer, in this case Scenic Hill Solar, owns, operates, and maintains the photovoltaic system, and a host customer, City of Hot Springs, agrees to site the system on its property and purchase the system's electric output from the solar services provider for a predetermined period. This financial arrangement allows the host customer to receive stable and often low-cost electricity, while the solar services provider or another party acquires valuable financial benefits such as tax credits and income generated from the sale of the electricity. In 2019, the Arkansas General Assembly passed Act 464 that, along with certain tax advantages, made solar power one of the cheapest ways to purchase electricity for local governments and educational institutions. However, Act 278 of 2023 amended the Arkansas Renewable Energy Development Act of 2001 and Act 464 of 2019. The changes include net metering rates changing from a 1-to-1 kilowatt to a two-way billing structure. Additionally, existing systems and new projects like the Hot Springs Solar Power Program that are installed and commissioned before September 30th, 2024 are granted legacy status in the current rate structure of 1-to-1 with rollover until June 1st of 2040. While new net metering facilities installed after September 30th will be subject to a new rate structure. Any excess energy that is fed back into the grid would be worth a fraction of what its previous value is under our pre-September 30th date. Moreover, 100% offset of the annual usage will not be obtainable after the September 30th, 2024 date. As you know, we've got the Southwest Wastewater Treatment Plant, 1.3 megawatts that's already operational, 4.36 megawatts at Davidson Drive. We have one in the works at Hot Springs Memorial Field, Airfield at the airport for about 1 megawatt, and that has been legacy status. We still require just over an additional 6 megawatts to round out what our goals are. Working with Scenic Hill, we asked, do you have any other properties located that have met that legacy status? And they were able to find a couple of properties. One is locally Mountain Pine, the Blees property. And then there are 2 pieces of property in Bald Knob, which would round out just about, I don't have that exact number in front of me right now, 1.4 megawatt on 11.32 acres in Garland County, 2.8 of DC facility, and then 22 acres in Bald Knob. So we're going to get about twice as much as what we currently have. It'll leave us somewhere around 1.8, 1.89 megawatts that we're still going to try to work through the system. We may not have legacy status for those. We may have to look at battery generation on some of those, or try to get behind the meter. Carrie Kyle with Scenic Hill Solar is with us today in the audience if you have any specific questions from Scenic Hill. But this will allow us to continue our goal to be totally self-sufficient on renewable energy as we move forward. And glad to answer any questions.
Director Holliday?
Thank you. It looks like both of these properties are a bit further away than the ones that we have. So in order to get them online, aside from just purchasing them, do we have any other upfront cost because of the distance, or is that part of the Scenic Hill agreement?
That'll be Scenic Hill Solar.
Okay.
And, you know, to pay for the studies for these, I want to say it was right around $1 million for the study itself that they had to pay Entergy. Once they get these plants online, they may see some return on that, but initially they had to pay $1 million just to get the studies done to reach this legacy status. Our cost is going to be just right at $250,000 for the property. And again, you know, back in 19 when we were looking at this, the city intends to also save about $28 million over the 30-year period. It's been a long road to get to where we are, and I'm pleased that we were able to find these particular properties, even though they are not within the city of Hot Springs. And in fact, you know, Southwest is not actually in the city of Hot Springs, but it is property that we own. We were hoping to be able to site all of these during some of the properties at one of our plants, one of our high energy users, but that's not possible. We still may have an opportunity at the new water plant, picking up some acreage out there to be able to have a solar field that we can connect behind the meter. But that's, you know, that'll be the next possibility that we'll look at.
Bill, will our packet have any comparisons between our cost of electricity with those that we built directly with Scenic Solar versus this style of?
So our cost will remain the same because we have a purchase power agreement with Scenic Hill Solar. So what we pay for, whether it's at our site or in the Bald Knob site, that has already been defined in the agreement that we have with Scenic Hill. So regardless of where it's located, we'll continue to reap the same benefit for the meters that are tied to these particular properties.
This energy just goes back on the grid.
It goes back on the grid at a 1-to-1.
One thing I want to point out to the board, since this is on consent, your packet and the offer and acceptance itself will reference Cardinal Land Investors LLC. That's an affiliate of Scenic Hill, so I don't want you to get sidetracked on that. That it's the offer and acceptance is with Cardinal Land Investors LLC.
Very good. Any additional questions from board members? Thank you.
Next, we have consider Resolution R-24-219, a resolution authorizing a contract for services with Hot Springs Metro Partnership, and our city attorney, B. Albright, will discuss.
Thank you, Bill, Mayor, members of the board. This is a continuation of our annual agreement with Hot Springs Metro Partnership to provide economic development services for the city of Hot Springs. The services are virtually identical to those that were contracted last year. They include a continuation of the promotion and marketing of the former Majestic Hotel site. One of the issues that I was asked about this week is whether or not this is an exclusive right of theirs. No, it's not. As we discussed last year, anyone can bring a proposal to the city, funnel that through the city manager's office, but they would assist us in vetting any proposed.
Usually, isn't it a separate item because he talks about it? It's not on consent? Isn't it usually like an item on the agenda, not on the consent agenda because Gary talks about it?
Well, Mr. Troutman provides us his, I guess, a monthly report, and that's under the guest item. This is an annual contract renewal that we do, no different than some of the other items we'll be addressing here, addressed last week.
I understand. I just thought it usually was separate as a discussion item where,
On new business.
yeah, on new business.
We can move it to new business if you'd like.
I'm not trying to cause any trouble.
Well, I mean, if Gary's going to be here to answer questions about this, we can't do that if we just put it on consent. So,
That's kind of,
yeah,
well,
Board's
I'd be
pleasure.
fine with it being on new business.
We'll move it to the first item of new business.
Is that it? Next, consider Resolution R-24-220, a resolution setting a public hearing on a proposed ordinance fixing rates for services rendered by the wastewater system of the City of Hot Springs. And again, our city attorney, Beek.
So one of the items that you have on your agenda later will be a first reading of a proposed wastewater rates ordinance. Arkansas law does require that once a rate ordinance for wastewater is introduced, that there needs to be a public hearing after proper notice. And so pursuant to the state law, Arkansas Code annotated, Section 14-235-223, this will do that and set the date and the hearing for your following meeting, which would be December the 17th.
Any questions of Brian on that item? Thank you.
Next, consider Resolution R-24-221, a resolution approving work order number 24-01 to the at-risk construction management and general contractor services agreement with Hill and Cox Corporation for the construction of an art base at Hill Wheatley Plaza in the amount of $159,246. And again, our Public Works Director, Ron Seabright.
Good afternoon. Well-known artist Long Hua Hsu and his late wife Chen Hsu decided they wanted to do something special for the people of Hot Springs. That decision started with the journey to develop an art piece called The Visitor. The Visitor is a 12-foot tall statue rendered in bronze. It depicts the Native American woman on horseback riding through water. Long Hua donated the labor involved in creating the statue, and the casting and shipment cost were all donated by Long Hua's friends and family. The work will be displayed in the middle of a large circular fountain in Hill Wheatley Plaza at Central and Reserve. Hot Springs is thrilled to receive such an extraordinary piece of art and looks forward to the display in a prominent location so that our citizens and guests can enjoy the statue. The city will be providing the granite-clad base, lighting, the fountain array to display the artwork. The work will be issued as a work order using our contractor management at risk contract awarded to Hill and Cox in the amount of $159,246.
Very good. Any questions of Ron? Director Holliday?
In this process, I'm assuming that the artist participated in the design of the base.
Yes, yes, he's been with it all the way.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
Next, consider Resolution R-24-223, a resolution authorizing the filing and acceptance of a U.S. Department of Transportation Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, also known as the RAISE grant, for the planning and design of multi-use trails, trail connectors, and a street extension planning in 2025. Did I skip one?
Yeah, I jumped ahead, so.
We need to do number 10.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. 24-222, resolution authorizing the filing and acceptance of a U.S. Department of Transportation Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability Equity RAISE grant for the capital construction of multi-use trails, trail connectors in 2025.
That sounded almost identical. didn't it?
Well, I forgot we flipped, one's construction and one's planning, and we flipped those since yesterday, so.
Good afternoon. Yes, we did.
Go ahead and cover both of those, Sarah.
Sure can. Thank you very much. The City of Hot Springs is seeking permission to submit its third application attempt for the RAISE funding to support the capital construction needs of a transformative multimodal trail system. The Southwest Trail System, developed in collaboration with Polsky, Saline, and Garland counties and local municipalities, is a visionary 60-mile multimodal bicycle and pedestrian trail connecting Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site to Hot Springs National Park. These trails represent critical recreational and alternative transportation corridors, offering significant opportunities for physical fitness, environmental education, floodplain management, enhanced wildlife habitat, and economic development. With this submission, the city seeks to leverage federal investment to advance its portion of the Southwest Trail, so just the portion within the city limits, including completion of Stokes Creek Greenway, which is already in multiple phases of planning or construction, but remains hindered by challenges in securing adequate funding opportunities. We've continued to refine our approach to better align with RAISE program's merit criteria, aiming to address key priorities such as safety, equity, climate sustainability, and economic competitiveness. This effort is intended to strengthen the city's application and secure high marks across all evaluation areas, further demonstrating its readiness and capacity to deliver impactful infrastructure projects. The City of Hot Springs plans to utilize these RAISE grants funds, if issued, to construct portions of the Southwest Trail within the city limits, including Stokes Creek Greenway and Pullman Avenue trailhead, and adding connections to other trails and installing necessary signage. Key components of the project will include the Southwest Trail alignment, Stokes Creek Greenway completion, Pullman Avenue trailhead. It also will align with federal priorities under the RAISE program, addressing critical merit criteria such as equity and connectivity, environmental sustainability, economic competitiveness, and safety. We have continued to demonstrate a steadfast commitment to refining our proposals over successful grant cycles, underscoring our determination to deliver transformative infrastructure projects that address community needs and priorities. This third attempt reflects lessons learned and feedback from previous submissions and strengthening our case for investment in this vital project while aligning more closely with the federal evaluation standards. Thank you. Welcome any questions.
Any questions of Sarah? Hearing none. Thank you.
Mayor.
Oh, Director Trustee.
Thank you, Mayor. What are the dollar amounts that we're applying for?
Yes, sir. So this is a substantial grant submission. It's a zero match, and this one would be $12,716,000, $536. It has increased as Mike Hill in engineering was able to rerun the numbers for us to put them together in terms of cost escalations of what it would take to actually construct these trail systems.
So this is the total for both of these resolution?
No.
No, actually, the 12
That's just the
million
first one.
is just for the capital
Okay.
piece.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you.
Any
All right.
additional questions by directors? Thank you.
Yes.
You gonna cover the planning grant?
Okay, so then we have, following right behind that, the RAISE planning grant application. And so this is kind of a two-pronged approach. We actually have received a project of merit, so we're in the queue right now to hopefully be awarded. So this would really just be a safety net, if you will, in case we are noticed in mid-January that we were not selected as a project of merit, then we would have 2 weeks to turn around and actually submit the planning portion of the RAISE grant, which again is a zero match application, and that amount is $3,111,000 and would be just for planning purposes and construction documents of the trail system. This strategy is to submit this application as part of the 2024 merit-based review. Notifications for the award status, as I said, would be January 13th, 2025. We're hoping that this will be unnecessary, but we want to make sure that we are ready and active and get those letters of support if we need them. The 2025 RAISE Planning Grant proposal is increased from what is currently in the queue, and that's because we've included additional pieces for community engagement and more robust community partnerships and conversations around the planning piece. Additionally, this planning grant does speak to the Building Street Connector, and as you'll remember, we've already submitted and we're waiting to hear on that Reconnecting Communities Pilot Grant Program, and that was a grant submission for planning that piece of that extension for $507,000. And so in In the case that we are awarded both, the city will adjust the RAISE planning grant scope to prevent any overlap or include additional elements as necessary and allowable under the grant guidelines. The proposed project for the RAISE planning piece includes Airport Trail, Goldfoot Trail, Whippleman Trail, and Railroad Trail, and the Belding Street connector to improve access and safety and enhanced connectivity and truck diversion. And I would,
Still a zero match.
zero match.
So you may recall, we were applied for the RAISE grant in 2024, the planning side. We were not selected. However, they added additional monies into the RAISE grant program and went back and said, okay, let's take a look at those projects of merit. We were fortunately notified that our project was considered a project of merit, so they're taking a re-evaluation of that. And as Sarah said, should we not come out with the planning grant, we've got one to come right behind it for 25.
Very good. Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is consider resolution R24-224, a resolution awarding a contract to Kate Incorporated for Phase 1 of the Stokes Creek Greenway Trail Project in the amount of $698,684.89. And our city engineer, Gary Carnahan, will present. Gary.
So we'll have to get used to hearing, when we talk about Greenway Trail, Stokes Creek Greenway Trail, because we have now awarded all the contracts for the Hot Springs Creek Greenway Trail to get us all the way to the lake at our kayak launch. So we're now turning to Stokes Creek, which is over in the eastern side of town, Leonard Street, Richard Street, Kimmery Park area, those elementary schools on Main Street, that part of the city. And so we had a bid opening, had 2 bids that were competitive. We're recommending award to the low bid, which was Kate Construction Company, which is a company we've worked with a lot in our trails, and they do good work, so we're feel comfortable awarding to them. And this is part of the Hot Springs Creek Trail Master Bike and Ped Master Plan. Will be built just like the trail on the Hot Springs Creek Greenway Trail, a paved 12-foot wide trail. And so we received a $350,000 grant, which is wonderful, from the TAP program. The Friends of the Park donated $5,500 toward this project, and we had $150,000 already set aside from a previous grant when we made the grant application as our grant match. And in order to award this, we'll use some surplus Complete Streets funds to award the entire amount of, with the administrative fee, $703,060. Any questions?
Any questions of Gary? Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
report.
Next will actually be your second item now under your new business. Consider resolution R24-225, a resolution authorizing the filing and acceptance of a Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, assistance to firefighters grant for the acquisition of a Class A pumper rescue vehicle. And again, Sarah with backup chief.
Wonderful, thank you again. Yes, so staff is seeking approval to prepare and submit a grant application for up to $1,500,000 in funding from FEMA for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant, or AFG grant program, for the acquisition of a Class A pumper rescue vehicle with a 10% local cost share requirement, or $150,000. If awarded, this vehicle would enhance operational capacity for Hot Springs Fire Department by serving as a frontline pumper rescue vehicle to support fleet flexibility and future needs, including coverage for the planned 6th fire station. The required cost share match of $150,000 will be funded from the Board Reserve Fund, ensuring no immediate impact on operational budgets. The FEMA Assistance to Firefighter Grant, or AFG program, is designed to enhance safety and operational effectiveness of fire departments and emergency response organizations. If awarded, this would cover the cost for a Class A pumper rescue vehicle designed to meet NFPA 1901 standards. The proposal will support the department by enhancing emergency response capabilities, addressing fleet gaps, and providing flexibility as a frontline pumper rescue. The total cost, as we mentioned, was $1,500,000, not to exceed. We have estimates coming in, though we'd have to fully bid that out. The grant turnaround is due on December 20th. Key benefits: safety, fiscal responsibility, as it would save the city over $1 million if awarded in equipment acquisition costs, operational readiness, and community impact. And we are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Sarah, on that grant, Chief, what is it, 2 years on a pumper?
Yes, sir.
Is there any deadlines that we have to have it spent by a certain time frame under that grant?
So if we're awarded, we'd be notified between April and September of 2025. So it would likely impact 2026 city budget and beyond. There would probably be, a robust process for bidding, and then we'd have to put down money for securing the payment.
They allow you to file extensions on the grant for the performance of it, especially in the environment that we have as far as verification of fire trucks. Aerial devices are almost 4 years, pumpers are about 2 years.
Yeah.
They will work.
Very good.
Thank you. Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. I think you just answered my question, but that's what I was going to ask too. If we were to get the grant submitted in time, which I think you will, and we get approval for it, what does that look like for us as far as obtaining the pumper? And then where do you see it being a need? Where do you plan on it going?
It's a great question. So what we'll do with it, we'll actually take it and it will end up going downtown because it is a combination rescue pumper. In other words, it will have full.
Chief, can you just move to the mic, please? Thank you.
Yes, sir. It'll have full rescue capabilities, and what we'll end up doing is we have a rescue truck now that's getting a little old. Well, we're going to do a combination with this, like we did with the rescue truck that's at the Lakeshore Fire Station. It will actually be able to serve as a pumper or be able to serve as a rescue truck. And what that helps us with is, especially if we do call-ins, it allows us to send people directly to a newer piece of equipment to respond to other fires that might come in or to assist on working scenes that take more than what our on-duty strength is.
Would that mean too then, Chief, that it's going to take the place of an existing pumper/rescue truck, or would this be added to the fleet for the fire
No, it will
department?
actually take the place of an existing, and it'll just allow for more flexibility, and actually over time, we'll actually be able to reduce the fleet by one vehicle by doing this, because we're combining a pumper and a rescue.
Part of our unfunded capital, we had, I think, maybe 3, maybe 4 actually, apparatus on that unfunded capital when we developed that. So he's got a pretty good capital replacement program that's already set out. So this one would move in and the oldest one would move out.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely right.
Very good. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing? Sarah is a team player, and she is such a joy to work with. Thank you for acquiring our service.
Don't grab a belt loop, she might drag you to death. I mean, we are struggling to keep up with her. All right, next you have your first ordinance of the evening. It's consider ordinance O-2437, an ordinance amending the zoning map from R2 suburban residential to C3 office neighborhood commercial for approximately 1 acre generally located at 2822 Malvern Avenue, amending the future land use map to neighborhood commercial and for other purposes. And our Planning and Development Director, Ms. Kathy Selman, will discuss this item.
Thank you. The applicant is Mr. Denny Teeter on behalf of the Teeter Family Trust. The property in question is currently vacant and undeveloped, but 1 acre with 350 feet of street frontage along Malvern Avenue, Highway 270. It's close to Lakeside Public Schools and approximately 3,200 feet from the Malvern Avenue MLK Expressway interchange. A good portion of this property is in floodplain. And additionally, the property contains a 20-foot wide easement that provides access to the rear. There's another lot which is used as Lakeside Preschool. Adjacent and nearby land uses include Lakeside Schools, shopping center, the preschool, a wellness business, duplex residential, and single-family residential. The Hot Springs Code describes the C3 neighborhood office commercial district as allowing for limited commercial along with office development in proximity to residential areas. Further, the district exists to provide mixed-use developments that increase the use of non-vehicular traffic. The C3 district also serves as a proper buffer between low-density residential and higher-intensity commercial uses. Building masses should be modest and in scale with residential developments. The applicant's narrative listed 2 of the mandatory findings that are required for approval of a zone district change. Those were compatibility with surrounding development and zoning, and consistency with the objectives of the zoning code, because the description of the C3 zone district in the code is so similar to the concept that Mr. Teeter has in mind for this property. If rezoned to C3, the property would be afforded the complete list of permitted and conditional uses that are listed in Hot Springs Code Table of Permitted Uses for the zone. The applicant did successfully demonstrate the standards for favorable consideration are met, and the recommendation from Planning Commission at their duly advertised November 7th meeting, after considering the record and calling for testimony, was a recommendation by a vote of 8-0 with Commissioner Gerke recusing. The recommendation being that the Board of Directors adopt an ordinance to amend the zoning map to designate the property C3 because the change does demonstrate compatibility with surrounding development and zoning, is consistent with the objectives of the zoning code, and further recommending to amend the future land use plan map to designate the property neighborhood commercial.
Any questions of Ms. Selman? Hearing none, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Next, consider ordinance O-2438, an ordinance fixing rates for services rendered by the wastewater system of the city of Hot Springs, repealing ordinance numbers 5978, 6354, and 6428, and prescribing other matters relating thereto. And again, our finance director, Karen Scott.
Thank you. The wastewater system of the City of Hot Springs is in need of capital improvements and betterments to comply with outstanding consent administrative orders, as well as providing for the capacity needed for future growth of the system. The estimated cost of the needed capital improvements and betterments is approximately $68 million. Revenue bonds will be required to fund that. Attached to your BARF will be presentations that were made to the Board of Directors by Wildan Financial Services as well as Cruz and Associates. ACA 14-235-223 provides that the rates or charges shall be sufficient in each year for the payment of the proper and reasonable expense of operation, repair, replacements, and maintenance of the system, and for the payment of the sums required to be paid into the seeking fund for the payment of bonds and interest thereon. A 2024 wastewater rate analysis and long-term financial plan has been conducted on behalf of the system by Wildan Financial Services, which indicates the need for an increase in rates sufficient to fund the necessary revenue bonds for the capital improvements and betterments of the system. The proposed ordinance will include rate schedules to become effective February 1st, 2025. The financial impact is that this proposed rate increase will generate the revenue necessary to fund debt service for the additional bond issue in the principal amount of $69.8 million.
Any questions of Karen on this item? Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Karen, there were some additional rate analysis and schedules requested by me. Would those be included in our packet as well?
No. Mr. Jackson will be here next Tuesday, and he will speak to the request that you discussed as far as you're talking about a senior citizen discount.
One additional analysis was, yes, to project what a senior citizen discount might look like with projects to be completed both within 3 and 5 years, the total package, which is around $69 million. And then the other was what might a rate analysis look like for just projects to be completed in 3 years, and that's at, I think, 47 million. Any reason why those will not be in our packet? I
have
realize he's
asked-
here to talk, but if it's in the packet, that gives me something to put my eyes on.
We
And-
have asked Dan to discuss that when he's here next week.
He's going
Okay.
to run some scenarios. I don't
He
know that
is.
he ran those models for us to put in the packet.
If it's at all possible, I want to request that they be in the packet.
I think it's going to cost us probably about 10 grand to do that. If the board wants to do that, tell us and we'll do it.
I don't think I would want to put 10 grand on another analysis, but
He's got to run the entire model again, and do so with coming back and looking. And one of the things,
I mean, I
and
do know
we may not have done well for you, talking in terms of 3-year and 5-year projects. The 5-year projects aren't projects that we're going to do in 5 years. Those are projects that we can't get completed in 3. They're all going to start. They just won't be completed within that 3-year to meet the revenue or the bond requirements of a revenue bond. So those projects, along with the others, we have to have them done by 2030. But that's why we separated those between taxable and non-taxable, because we know what we pretty sure we can get done in the 3-year. And then those others, we have to have done the other 2 years, but they'll start before that time frame comes. I think I've got Bob also running some projections on that, and whether Bob runs the financial analysis portion of it, and then Dan runs the rate model portion of it. So I've asked Bob to also look at that and see what that looked like between the two. And he's going to do that, but he's, as we looked at that, we know what the rates are today on taxable and non-taxable. We got a feeling. I mean, the bond markets are already taking in consideration a new administration. Those things are already baked into the cake. And speaking with Bob, he was like, well, I don't take your money to Oaklawn, and this, you need to think about this as something similar. Do you want to gamble on what's going to happen in 2 years, or do you want to go with what you know that you can pass a rate ordinance for and get this done by this amount? And he said, otherwise, you're gambling on that in 2 years when we go back for the additional money. It may, instead of being 250 over the next 3 years, we may be looking at something much greater. So I think they'll both be here and be able to address your concerns. But I did ask Dan to run that if he could and look at what that looked like if we only did the 43 million. But in speaking to both of them, our financial advisor and our rate consultant, they did not think it was, they did not recommend doing that. But they'll be here to discuss that with you on Tuesday.
I bring it up just because we do owe it to the ratepayers, to the citizens, to have a multitude of options, on the table, and to examine it in its entirety. And your point's taken that, it could be a gamble, but in a sense, it might not be a gamble. It may be a safe bet, just
And
as
I'm not
much
a-
as those rates may rise in 2 years, they may go down in 2
Well,
years.
I'm not the economist, Director Webb, but that is why we pay Cruz and Associates to do this for us. They are the experts.
Well, what may be the more relevant issue is that all of the projects will have to start immediately. It's just that some of them won't be completed within the 3 years. So does that knowledge change your outlook on whether or not you should split it up?
It does in a sense. I don't think I was aware that they all were essentially starting on the same time. I focused more on what has to be completed within 3 years versus 5 years. But if what you're saying is that what is to be completed in 5 years could only be completed in 5 years if we were to start at the same time as the other, it does have somewhat of a difference.
And some of that will depend on our, whether we can get enough contractors in here, kind of like we did with the water plant, where we had multiple projects going at one time. I don't think we could get it done if we had to do everything linear, but that's one of the reasons why we needed the funds up front, was to be able to get these contracts let out, get people under contract so we know exactly what it is, because things are a lot more expensive today than they were last year, and that's a lot more expensive than they were the year before. These major utility projects are spinning out of control in cost, and I think that kind of led into their analysis in recommending to us that we take it all down in a taxable and a non-taxable.
Can we spread out that much work over that many projects? I mean, there's over 11 different projects embedded in those two different packages to be completed in 3 and to be completed in 5.
Gary, you're here with us. I mean, I think we've got 4 different engineering companies that are doing design on part of those projects. And then as we get those in the design phase, we can let them out and find out, who's going to be doing that, whether it's a Michaels or a K-Jax or a Diamond or a
Coakley.
or Coakley. Some of those projects will depend on one of the other projects being completed, especially when you start tying those in. But we've got a lot of work out there, and we've got a finite date. We're going to be late on one already, our 2025. But we've got to show them that we're working towards that 2030, or we're going to have some issues outside of what we have in fines from either DEQ or the EPA. We are under that consent administrative order, which is really pushing all of this.
Well, that's the important part. It's we're in an environment where it's not that we can wait and do it when we feel the timing is right with the economy or the interest rates. We're up against an administrative consent order. We've got to move forward. I think Director Dobbs Smith made a comment towards the end of the discussion during the work session that, well, if interest rates drop, we'll just go back into the market and refinance. And we've done that with a number of debt instruments over the years, and once we get that appropriate spread between what it's dropped to and what we issued at, it makes economic sense to make the change. So in this, what's being proposed has been alluded to. All projects can get started once the design is complete and the bids are secured and contractors identified, and we'll have the money to pay.
And we've got a few projects shelf ready, just waiting on the funding. And I do want to, I appreciate what Director Webb is saying. I mean, we definitely want to look at for what's best for your constituents and our ratepayers. But I hope the board has some confidence that staff is doing that in each and everything that we do. And that's, I mean, we look at these about every which way you can before we ever get to a point of bringing them to you.
All right. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, your next item is consider ordinance O-2439, an ordinance amending Chapter 6 of Title 4 of the Hot Springs Code relating to parking regulations, restrictions, enforcement, and penalties, and for other purposes. And Deputy City Manager Lance Spicer will bring this one to you.
Yes, good evening. This particular item comes to you requesting to amend some sections of your Hot Springs Code. Really what we're talking about here is overtime parking, so that's specific to our paid parking program, and additionally it deals with the way that those citations are issued. Our request is to change these from criminal citations to a civil penalty, and our city attorney could probably address some of the questions you may have in that regard, but really what we're looking to do, and the reason for it is there were some limitations within the district court software that is utilized by the police department when they issue a citation. It being a criminal citation, we needed to have some integration with our existing software provider, IPS. That was not something that was capable of being done in any near future in talking with the Administrative Office of Courts. They said the integrations, they're moving away from those legacy systems, and essentially that was not going to be something that they would entertain in the next few years, which was not going to work for us. So basically what we ended up doing was working with IPS and coming up with a way where these penalties, these parking citations, are issued in a civil manner. And what that does is that really allows us some flexibility, some functionality to deal with these violations. So for people that are issued these citations, they're able to much more quickly pay for citations as opposed to district court where there's 10, 2-week, 3-week time frames before the tickets post, or maybe not that long, but a good deal of time. They're able to make those payments much more quickly. It's more efficient. It's a little more user-friendly. But that's the reasoning for these adjustments. The adjustments that we're looking to make also deal specifically with these penalty amounts, because some of the things that we've had on the books, they've been around since 2004. Obviously, we've adjusted our parking fees, which those need to kind of move in concert with one another. What we're looking to do from a civil penalty standpoint is to have a first violation, second violation, and third violation. And it graduates up. Each thing has kind of an escalator within it. First violation is, your first offense is $35. Second offense is $50. Third offense is $100. As you progress past the third violation, your fourth citation will be issued as a criminal citation. So in a calendar year, I should add that. Now, there are some benefits to doing this through the IPS system. We do have the ability to offer a discount for those that pay within the first 48 hours of issuing that citation. They would be allowed to have a $10 deduction on that civil penalty. So instead of it being a $35 penalty, it would be a $25 penalty if paid within the first within 48 hours. Really, when you're talking about parking citations, you're looking to stay on their mind very quickly, whereas they don't leave town and essentially forget about it. You want to make sure that you make it easy for individuals to pay for these different citations and make it as easy as you can. That's really what we're attempting to do here by, one, offering this civil penalty route, offering payment options online or in person for individuals to pay these different citations, but also to have an easier way to do it. Now, I talked about the civil penalty, the different rates or fees as we move through them, the reduction, the $10 reduction. For those that choose not to pay, let's pretend we're on the first offense, there is also an escalator based upon time past issuance. So after the 21st day, that civil penalty will go up $20. Past the 45th day, an additional $20. Any citations that remain unpaid, doesn't matter if it's first offense, second offense, etc., those would be eligible for a criminal citation. And so that's kind of the escalator piece of it. Now, for those individuals that are parked in, we've got primary and secondary spaces. If they receive a citation in a primary space, and what we have is that 2, 2, 4, and 8, so a maximum of $16 if you stayed that entire 4 hours. If they choose to stay past the citation time, it's $5 for each additional hour that you remain in that space. Really trying to work to move people along, not be too punitive, but obviously influence their behavior in that regard. Additionally, I think there's a lot within this particular ordinance adjustment. There are some technical corrections within it, changing some of the verbiage and things of that nature. There will be a highlighted copy within your packet to address those, and I don't think I'm missing anything based upon what we have. I think, like I said, there's a kind of hit the high points. Let's see, 3. I think I've covered it.
Any questions of Lance? Director Holliday.
Okay, I have a couple. One, when you're talking about overtime parking, you're talking about parking beyond your prepaid amount.
Correct.
And so, but just now you were talking about the primary parking, you would still get the $35 violation plus an additional $5 per hour, however many hours you're past?
You stayed past, yes.
Okay.
Now, to kind of that line of thinking, like for the secondary spaces, there's unlimited time. Essentially, that $5 escalator would not likely come into play on those.
Okay, and I know it'll be in my packet, but I was just writing, you said if not paid within 21 days, it's an additional $20. What was the 45, what was the rest of that escalation?
Additional $20 if not paid by 45 days.
Okay, what was it for 21? It's $20 each time?
Yes.
Okay, and then what was that max time, the maximum amount of time?
Anything past 45 days, the fines would still be in place, but they would be eligible for a criminal citation.
That was awesome. And then the only other thing is permanent resident parking. I know you and I have talked about that in the past. We've got about a dozen or so people that live downtown, so how we're addressing that, I know we don't have it in our code currently, but I'd like to see something put in writing to protect the people who actually live downtown permanently, so they're not within the system as it stands.
Understood. If that's everybody's, and city manager can probably talk to this a little bit. I've talked to him about, we do have some residents downtown and may want to address that component.
You know, we have the ability to do discounts for employee parking, but those that are actually residing in the downtown area, because we've worked a long time trying to encourage upper floor development and living and being able to be in our downtown area, we've got the ability to issue permits to those. And I think so far we've had 8 that we could, that truly do live there. There are some that live downtown that have garages, that have areas that they could park off street. So I don't know if that's something that the board wants to consider. Do we bring something for those upper developments that don't have any parking? But we could open that up to where we could have a permit for those. Do we do that at no cost? Do we have a monthly fee for a permit? Those are some things I think we're going to need some direction from the board on, but we do have the ability to make a permit for those that are truly living downtown. And that could be anywhere from 0 to what this board decides is a rate.
When do you want direction on that?
We're going to be bringing it to you Tuesday, so if there's some comments today that you can kind of give us, we'll try to develop that in the code, and then you could either amend that or vote for that at the meeting on Tuesday night.
Director Webb?
Yeah, I would want us to probably entertain something to that notion, to where, any permanent residence that is downtown, I think were you alluding to 8 that y'all have been able to point out so far?
That have no parking.
Right, you're right, 8 residents that have no either garage or somewhere to park close by. I mean, if it's public street or roadway that the city maintains, it seems to me like the permit is a good way to go, but there should be some cost to it, because there's some cost to the upkeep for that road or for that parking spot. What that might look like, I don't really know. What's a compatible city that has resident parking permits?
Well, we're a little strange in that area because that's a state highway. We don't really have costs for down there except, what we're doing with the crosswalks. But we do have cost for our parking program. So, I don't really have a suggestion there. I mean, we talked about 0, we talked about $100 a month, and if we kind of see how that's working, we can make adjustments to it in the future. But I do agree that we need some kind of,
as quick as I tell you
mechanism.
that, that there should be some cost, I'll look at some other roads that are in other districts in the city where they park on the street, on the road, and pay nothing.
Yeah.
So would it be fair to subject these 8 residents that are downtown to pay any money for parking when we have several roads, a few of which that are in my district and others that are in District 3? I'm thinking of the Main Street area, Main Street and Richard and so forth, where they park on the road, 3rd Street, and I don't think they're paying any permits.
Well, but we do have a parking, in the downtown area, we've implemented this paid parking program, and so it doesn't differentiate. It can't really differentiate whether your housing is right there in one of the upper floors or you're an employee going to work. I mean, we did offer a differentiation for a discount to the employees so that, they can maintain employment downtown, and employers can maintain employees downtown. But if you're going to reside downtown, and it's no different than any other bigger community, you're going to pay for parking in a parking garage somewhere. And then you have some other developments occurring with VRBOs coming online or existing, and those people are paying to, you know, to reside for a few days, a week, or whatnot. And in their budget, they're going to build in an expense to pay. And here again, remember, it's only from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So if I live downtown, unless I work downtown, and I reside downtown, I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive somewhere. And they may not even have a car. You know, they may take the municipal transportation and to their place of employment.
And, you know, we have premium, non-premium, unregulated. And we have a large amount of parking that'll be free on the side of the street in those unregulated parking areas.
People just have to walk if they want to save that money. I understand that. But that's something for us to give consideration to over this holiday period. But let's throw some ideas out to city administration on what our individual thoughts are. Director Dobbs?
I was kind of going along the lines of what you're saying. We do have streets where you can't park. When you buy a house, you kind of buy a house that has whatever parking you desire. One of the reasons that people wanted to live downtown was presumably so they could walk. They didn't have to park a car, but if they do, and the Airbnbs, that was one of the things too. Are we going to, their resident, that's what the Supreme Court said, do we have to give them free parking for a while, for the time that they're here? But until that subject came up, the main thing I wanted to ask you was, who issues these citations? Are they police department?
That is.
And when I've used those apps in other cities, I pay, and then when it's coming up on time, I get a notice on my phone that says you're about to run out.
Right.
Do you want to continue?
Same.
So we have that.
Yes.
Do we also have the ability, if I didn't see that, I was in the spot, I didn't see my notice, and I ran overtime, do we have the ability to pay the ticket that way as well?
Yes, you
So
do.
everything can be done, so there's no, so if it says pay your ticket now, you get $10 off, I can pay it now?
Correct,
Because
yeah.
I know I stayed too long in the spa.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that was the whole idea behind this this functionality aspect, was to offer many options, many ways to pay, and do it as quickly as possible with, as hopefully as efficiently as possible.
So we'll know when we get that notice on, it's not like the ticket blew off my car, I didn't know.
Right.
We know when but will the software automatically charge a ticket?
It will not charge, like if you're talking about charge you the fee.
Yeah, like how does the?
Does an
so-
officer
So
or
if we don't have an
traffic
officer on duty, people
That
could be
issue.
not paying or going over.
It's not going to automatically ding your card that you
Yeah.
have tied to your
It doesn't,
parking.
we don't have like
No.
transponders on there
No,
telling
and
them.
I-
that-
So when we
Right,
come
and
by and read
I
your
wanna-
license plate.
Right.
I don't know we're getting that sophisticated.
Now,
I do want to point out that the only violation that the civil penalty applies to is the overtime parking. It's because, we now have the technology that affords us the ability to do that. Much like if any of you have driven in Texas or Oklahoma and perhaps, might have been speeding on a controlled access highway, or maybe you didn't pay the toll or what have you, you get that little notice in the mail, right? This is only tied to the overtime parking within the regulated parking areas. I also wanted to point out that what you're going to have in your packet is an amendment to all of Chapter 6. Don't get too far down in the weeds. There were a lot of technical corrections that needed to be made. There were lots of areas that referred to chapter when it should have said section and that sort of thing. Focus your energy, if you will, on 14.6.16, which has to do with the overtime parking itself.
Say that again, Brian. 14 what?
14.6.16. It'll be highlighted.
Lance, you made a comment about the series of citations and it builds. Is this on a per vehicle basis? Does it somehow tie back to a driver's license or what?
Per license. Per vehicle license.
Vehicle license.
Yeah.
So if you have a fleet of vehicles, you might just stay at one citation for a while.
Yeah, you can spread them out if you got a fleet of vehicles, but
I
it's
was looking
tied
at
directly.
Director Trustee when I said that, I mean. All right. Director Trustee.
Just, I want you to know, I haven't been speeding in Texas, first off, and then second, I don't have a fleet of vehicles. What is the current parking violation for downtown? $10 for whatever? And the
Overtime parking.
overtime parking is $10. And if, excuse me, and then if you do that again the next day, it's still $10. It does not escalate because we don't have the software to track that. Is that
Correct.
right?
Not today.
Okay.
Other violations like fire lane,
Sure.
handicap parking, those are different. We're just talking about overtime parking based on the rates that you established previously, which is where you would want, if you wanted to talk about a residence rate or permit or what have you, that's the section you would want to deal with. You wouldn't address that with what's on your agenda
Today.
for this upcoming meeting.
Okay.
But we can bring you another ordinance
Absolutely.
amending that.
Sure, you bet.
Well,
We just need direction.
I definitely think we need to have some type of a permit, just from conversations I've had with residents. There's a few blocks that have almost no secondary parking, and no unregulated parking. And so we've got two issues. One is the cost, but then also just the time. You know, if someone is homesick, all of a sudden they would be, through the roof in violations just because they're homesick from work.
Or they work from home.
Or they work from home. And so I think the permit is a good thing. If we had 50 permits to issue, it'd be different. We'd start getting into the value of the parking and possibly changing that income. But because we're looking at less than a dozen at the moment, I think I wouldn't go as high as 100 because that's a utility payment. And I know parking is like a utility, but for it to come in the middle of someone's lease, they may have a year lease and they may have a fixed budget. So I know if I had a $100 bill starting in January, it would change a lot of things in my world personally. So if we want to get up to something like that, I'd ask that it would take place over a length of time, because I think $100, especially if you're in a lease and want to keep living where you live, that's kind of a chunk of money. But moving forward, if the buildings that are getting renovated don't have parking and we have more upper level living, maybe we can look at something else. But right now, I think the amount of time that a dozen vehicles are going to be downtown isn't going to negatively impact our income from the parking plan. And I think we do need to do something for them. I've had more than one resident reach out to me directly when all of this was coming up, asking how we were addressing it. And I think part of the reason it wasn't in there is because it's only 10 or 12 people. So we needed to get the rest of the program put together. But I don't know what the time frame would need to be for that, but obviously before January 1, so they don't start getting tickets next year when the plan goes into effect.
We can take care
So-
of the overtime parking, and V can help us bring something to, was it titled, did you say 10?
It would most likely be in Title 10,
Yeah.
Chapter 7.
And bring you something back in December?
Okay.
I'm just going to caution everybody that, we do have a discount for the employees working downtown, and many of them obviously are in the hospitality industry, and those aren't the highest paying jobs. And so I don't think it should be less than what they're paying.
Well, I think it's a matter, the challenge in that is just the volume of hours, too. I agree, because I think if we're asking people to work.
There's a volume of hours for the downtown employees, too. If you work 8 to 5, with an hour, you got 9 hours, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, times, whatever, you've got time there. So.
Well, and I think that'll be a matter of, I think Lance has probably done plenty of arithmetic in and around this, but, you know, I will say that the people that I have talked to were willing to pay something. They weren't
Yeah.
asking for free parking, but
Well,
they.
I don't
but
think
they
we're
did
looking
just-
at anything that's going to be exorbitant.
No.
And then it's just a function, Lance, of monitoring who's all living downtown and verification and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
I did want to add that as far as the way the system's set up, you do have to provide proof of
Residency.
employment, proof of residence. There's catches to make sure that you don't have, like, for example, a short-term rental where they're seeking to have, essentially some parking designated for them. We'll ensure that there's a lease or whatever the case may be, that it is a permanent resident of downtown.
Director Webb?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You were alluding to, employees having a discount. Isn't their discount set at 75% less
Yes.
for,
And the
you know,
non-primary.
For
non-primary
secondary.
parking?
Yes.
I would think we could lean towards maybe the permit falling into that category. However, that may look as it relates to a monthly scale,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because most,
And you were saying, providing a proof of residency and maybe also submitting the number of vehicles. Would there be a cap on how many you could get a permit for? Would it be just for the resident and they could apply the permit to the total number of vehicles they have?
I think the permit's gonna have to be tied to the license plate.
Okay.
yeah. Understood.
We had an individual who had about 4 vehicles parked in the parking garage for a continuous period of time. And granted, we didn't have paid parking at that time. It's all been within the last few months. And so finally, appropriate authorities have contacted him and had those vehicles removed.
I think you had to tow one of them.
Pardon?
I think you had to tow one of them.
Yeah, it wouldn't start.
Oh, when it started, okay.
It's got to be reasonable because at the end of the day, I think what we want to do is encourage living downtown and bringing residents here. What we don't want to do is have a deterrent to living downtown because somebody's going to have to pay an excessive amount just to park their vehicle.
Yeah, we don't have a dollar amount. That's what we're
Right.
trying to provide feedback. So, Director Trustee.
Thank you. One last question. Lance, we've just passed a budget that included projections for revenue from parking. Were the fines included in those revenues, or are these fines going to be over and above that budgeted amount that we looked at?
We did not include any of the fines, any of those penalties in it, just because we didn't have a real good history on it. But those would be in addition to any of those revenues that we expect to generate off the parking fees.
And those fees, those fines come to the city?
Correct.
Not to the court system, but to the city?
And that was an additional piece of why we wanted to keep it on this end, especially with the civil penalty. It does operate, it's a
Right.
function out of Ms. Scott's office, and it doesn't necessarily go to district court unless you're dealing on the criminal side of things.
And I don't know of many in district court that we've actually received anything. A lot of those are maybe dismissed, but
Why are you looking
I
at
think
me?
Director Beard, you mentioned something at one of our meetings, where you had lived somewhere that didn't have a lot of parking and you had to park on the street and pay. I can't remember what you said, though, had us thinking about how we were going to try to come up with this schedule of penalties. You remember, what was that you said the other day? You recall?
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, we've
Okay.
tried to cover some of the bases as far as making sure the enforcement piece works and functions as a portion of our paid parking program. And of course, the way that the system's set up, like I said earlier, we hope it's the most efficient and user-friendly that we can offer for those that are unfortunately given a citation, a civil penalty one.
Okay, well, we got some work to do over this holiday period to think through this individually and share your thoughts with Bill.
And again, those issues would not be remedied by the
This.
agenda item that you have before you.
That's right. But we'll try
My
to
bad.
develop one we can bring you and have discussion.
Yes.
Very good. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, I believe that concludes. We will conclude our meeting next week with executive sessions to do the annual evaluation of the city manager and city attorney. But as for tonight, that completes our agenda meeting. It's dark out. Be safe out there. I can guarantee it's colder now than when you came in.
If you go to, tell them you're there with Habitat. That's right. 10% of your